I've always found storms thrilling. Their chaos, their energy, the way they sweep through and leave everything feeling alive. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened during that storm. It wasn't the thunder that shook me. It wasn't the lightning that made my heart race. It was what my neighbor did. Something I never expected. My name's Rachel. I'm 46, and I've lived in the quiet town of Maple Hollow for over a decade. Life here is peaceful, predictable, maybe too predictable. Lately, I'd felt something stirring inside me, a kind of restlessness I couldn't explain. That Friday night, I was curled up alone watching an old black and white movie when the lights flickered, and then everything went dark. I sighed, groping for candles, while the wind outside howled louder, bending the trees like they were made of paper. The rain started pounding the roof, hard. I wrapped myself in an old quilt, ready to ride it out alone. Then came the knock. Loud. Urgent. My heart skipped. Who would be out in a storm like this? I grabbed a flashlight, crept to the door, and peeked through the glass. Standing there, drenched and shivering, was Nathan, my quiet, mysterious neighbor from down the street. We'd never exchanged more than a polite wave. But that night, something shifted. And let me tell you, what unfolded next wasn't just surprising. It changed everything. That night felt like any other. Quiet, uneventful. Rachel sat curled up on the couch, watching an old black and white movie, the kind that felt comforting in its predictability. But outside, the world was shifting. The wind was rising, trees swaying like dancers in a stormy waltz, and the sky had turned an ominous shade of gray. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Once, twice, then gone. Darkness swallowed the room. "Perfect," Rachel muttered, rising to her feet and fumbling through the drawers for matches. She lit a few candles, their glow casting soft, flickering shadows across the walls. The rain began to pound harder, like 1,000 small fists hammering the roof in chaotic rhythm. Wrapped in a worn quilt that smelled faintly of lavender and old memories, Rachel settled back onto the couch, trying to ride out the storm in solitude. Then, a loud knock. 3 sharp, urgent bangs at the front door. Her body tensed. Who would be out in weather like this? Grabbing her flashlight, she crept toward the front door, heart pounding in her chest. She peeked through the fogged-up window and froze. There, on her porch, stood Nathan, her neighbor from 2 doors down, quiet, reserved, a man she barely knew beyond polite nods and brief greetings. But now he was soaked to the bone, hair plastered to his forehead, clothes clinging to him as rain poured down around him. Rachel opened the door, her voice uncertain. "Nathan?" "I'm sorry," he said quickly, shivering. "A tree fell across my driveway, my power's out, my phone died, I didn't know where else to go." In that moment, something shifted. Not in the storm, but in her. Nathan stepped hesitantly into the warm glow of candlelight, dripping water onto the hardwood floor. His shoulders were hunched, his hair soaked and clinging to his forehead. Rachel handed him a thick towel without a second thought. "You're going to catch your death out there," she said gently, brushing concern from her voice with a hint of humor. He dried off awkwardly, cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "I didn't want to impose," he mumbled. My driveway's blocked by a tree, power's out, and my phone died. I didn't know where else to go." Rachel smiled softly. "Nathan, it's okay. That's what neighbors are for." His posture relaxed slightly as she motioned him toward the couch. The flickering candles softened the edges of the room, and of him. She noticed for the first time how kind his eyes looked in the low light, the quiet strength in his expression. She offered him a cup of tea, still warm from before the power had gone out. They sat in the hush of storm and shadows, sipping tea while the wind howled outside. Then, without prompting, Nathan spoke. "I moved here for a fresh start," he said quietly. "My wife passed away 5 years ago. I thought I was doing fine until nights like this." Rachel looked down into her cup. "I understand. I've been divorced for 7 years. No drama, just faded into silence." The quiet between them wasn't awkward. It was honest. A space of shared solitude. The storm outside raged on, but inside something fragile and unexpected was unfolding. The kind of connection neither had planned for, but both had been quietly craving. Nathan looked over at her. "It's the silence that's hardest, isn't it?" Rachel nodded slowly. "Especially when it's loud enough to hear what your heart's been missing." The storm outside roared, but inside Rachel's living room, the air was warm, quiet, and filled with something neither of them had expected: ease. Nathan sat beside her, the soft glow of candlelight tracing the worn edges of his features, highlighting the lines that hinted at pain, survival, and countless untold stories. He held the tea gently in both hands, as if anchoring himself in the moment. "It sneaks up on you, doesn't it?" Rachel said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The loneliness." Nathan glanced at her, a quiet understanding in his eyes. "It's the silence that gets to me most," he replied, "especially on nights like this." Neither of them needed to explain further. The space between them wasn't filled with words, but with something deeper: mutual recognition. The rain played its steady rhythm against the windows, as if giving their hearts permission to speak truths usually buried. Rachel felt something shift inside her. She hadn't let anyone this close, this fast, in years. Yet nothing about this felt forced. It felt inevitable. After a long pause, Nathan turned slightly toward her, his voice low and careful. "Rachel," he said, "thank you for letting me in tonight. You didn't have to." She placed her hand gently on his arm, surprising even herself. "I'm glad you knocked," she admitted, her voice tinged with raw honesty. "Storms like this usually remind me how alone I am. Tonight feels different." He looked at her hand, then into her eyes. "I'd like to get to know you better, if you'd be open to that." Her heart fluttered, not with fear, but with something that felt dangerously close to hope. "I'd like that too," she whispered. And just like that, the storm had brought more than fallen trees and broken branches. It had cracked open something tender and true, something neither of them had realized they still longed for. Morning crept in quietly, casting soft light across Rachel's living room. The storm had passed, but its memory lingered in the scent of damp earth and the flicker of candle stubs still burning low. Outside, broken branches littered the street, leaves clung to windows, and fences sagged under the weight of the night's fury. Nathan had left just after sunrise, offering a quiet goodbye at the door with a soft smile and a gentle, "Thank you." But even after the door closed behind him, his presence lingered. Rachel found herself replaying every glance, every word, every moment of unexpected closeness. She wrapped her hands around a mug of coffee, staring out the window. The storm might have passed, but something inside her had only just begun to stir. Later that afternoon, Rachel was out in the yard, gathering debris and stacking broken branches into neat piles. The sun peeked through the clouds as if trying to make amends for the chaos of the night before. She heard footsteps, slow, familiar. Nathan was walking toward her. He paused at the edge of her property line, a cautious smile tugging at his lips. "Hey again," he called, brushing a leaf from his jacket. "Looks like you've got your hands full." Rachel laughed softly, brushing wind-tangled hair from her face. "It's not so bad. How's your place?" He sighed. "Not great. That tree took out my fence and part of the roof. It's a mess." Without thinking, she responded, "Then let me help." Nathan blinked, surprised. "Are you sure? You've got your own storm to clean up." Rachel planted her hands on her hips with mock defiance. "Absolutely. I owe you for keeping me company last night." He smiled, truly smiled, eyes crinkling with quiet gratitude. And just like that, they were walking side by side toward his house. Two neighbors bound by a storm, and something deeper they hadn't dared name yet. Rachel didn't expect hauling tree limbs and clearing debris to feel good. But with Nathan beside her, the hours passed like minutes. They worked in quiet rhythm, cutting branches, stacking wood, laughing occasionally at the absurdity of it all. His yard was a mess. Splintered fence, crushed shrubs, leaves everywhere. But somehow, none of it felt overwhelming. Between trips to the curb, conversation flowed naturally. Nathan shared stories from his past, of road trips with his late wife, of moving to Maple Hollow for a fresh start. Rachel opened up too, talking about dreams she'd shelved and the ache of quiet evenings spent alone. There was no awkwardness, no pretense, just two people, side by side, shedding layers of silence with every branch they moved. By late afternoon, they were leaning against his porch railing, sipping lemonade, catching their breath. The sky had cleared, brilliant and blue, as if the world was apologizing for last night. Nathan looked up at the open sky. "It's funny," he said, voice low. "Sometimes the worst storms bring the clearest skies, like they wash everything clean." Rachel followed his gaze, the breeze lifting strands of her hair. "I was thinking the same thing," she said quietly. "It's strange how something so chaotic can lead to something that feels this peaceful." He turned to her, his expression gentle but searching. "I've spent a long time convincing myself I didn't need anyone. That solitude was strength." Her breath caught in her throat. "But being with you," he continued, "even just these 2 days, it's made me realize how wrong I was." Rachel reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining easily. "Maybe we both needed that storm more than we realized," she whispered. He smiled, and in the stillness that followed, something unspoken settled between them, like truth, like fate. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting golden light across Nathan's yard, he turned to Rachel with a look she hadn't seen before. Hopeful, a little nervous, and entirely sincere. "Would it be okay if I took you to dinner sometime?" he asked softly, voice low, almost hesitant. "I'd really like to spend more time with you. Intentionally." Rachel felt her heart stir unexpectedly, beautifully. She smiled, warmth blooming in her chest. "I'd love that, Nathan." His relief was visible, a boyish grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. They stood there a moment longer, quiet and content, before parting ways for the evening. A few days later, Rachel found herself standing in front of the mirror, smoothing the soft fabric of a blue dress that brought out the color in her eyes. Her heart fluttered with nerves she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just dinner, it was possibility. When Nathan arrived, he looked effortlessly handsome in a navy shirt and dark slacks, with sleeves rolled casually at the forearms. He handed her a single deep red rose. "You look beautiful, Rachel," he said, his voice tender. They dined at a small Italian restaurant, tucked away in a quiet corner of town, its soft lighting and mellow music wrapping around them like a warm blanket. Conversation flowed like a familiar song. Laughter, shared memories, lingering looks. Halfway through the meal, Nathan grew quiet. He set his fork down and met her eyes with calm seriousness. "There's something I've wanted to say since the storm," he began. "After my wife passed, I built walls I didn't even realize were there. I told myself I was fine being alone." Rachel reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. "You're not alone anymore," she said gently. "I didn't think I'd feel this again," he admitted, voice thick with emotion. "But with you, it feels possible." Their hands stayed joined as the night deepened around them. Two hearts slowly finding their way back to life. Beneath the soft glow of the restaurant's golden lights, the space between Rachel and Nathan grew quieter, but heavier. Not with awkwardness, but with the weight of something real taking root. Nathan's voice broke the stillness, low and steady. "It's been so long since I've allowed myself to feel this way. After Lisa passed, I told myself I was fine, that solitude was safer." Rachel nodded slowly. "I've been doing the same, pretending I didn't need anyone. But that night you knocked, something woke up in me. Like I remembered what it means to really feel seen." His gaze held hers, steady and full of emotion. "With you, I feel like I can finally let my guard down. Like maybe it's okay to want more again." They didn't need to say the words out loud. The look in their eyes said it all. Later, as they walked slowly beneath the soft shimmer of streetlights, their hands found each other naturally, fingers interlocking with a kind of quiet certainty. The breeze was gentle, the moon casting silver ribbons across the pavement, the air filled with something unspoken, but powerful. They paused near a small park, where trees swayed gently in the night air. Nathan turned to her, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. His fingertips lingered softly against her cheek. "Rachel," he whispered, "I didn't expect any of this, but now that it's here, I don't want to let it go." Her breath caught. "Neither do I." He leaned in slowly, and she met him halfway. Their kiss was soft, tentative, yet filled with a deep, quiet intensity, the kind that speaks of second chances and untold futures. When they finally pulled apart, Nathan rested his forehead gently against hers. "I didn't think I'd ever feel this again," he murmured. Rachel smiled, her fingers tracing the edge of his jaw. "You're not the only one." In that moment, under the moonlit sky, something lonely inside both of them finally felt whole. Rachel couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this alive. The days that followed unfolded like a dream, gentle, bright, and full of quiet magic. Each morning seemed a little warmer, each evening a little softer, now that Nathan had become a part of her life in ways she hadn't dared to hope for. They took long walks through Maple Hollow, shared coffee on front porches, and lingered in conversation long after the sun had gone down. There was a rhythm forming between them, one that felt effortless. The kind of bond built not just from attraction, but from something deeper, trust, understanding, and a shared sense of rediscovery. Rachel found herself laughing more, sleeping better, smiling at nothing. The loneliness that once felt like a permanent part of her life was slowly fading into the background. One sunny afternoon, as they sat side by side on her porch, Nathan turned to her with a thoughtful expression. "You know," he said, watching the wind ripple through the trees, "I keep thinking about that night, the storm. What are the odds that it led me to your doorstep?" Rachel followed his gaze, heart fluttering. "I've been thinking the same thing," she admitted. "It's almost like fate decided we both needed a nudge." He looked at her, eyes warm with a mix of wonder and affection. "If it hadn't been for that tree, for the blackout, we might still be strangers." She reached over, lacing her fingers through his. "But we're not, and I don't ever want to go back." He squeezed her hand gently. "Neither do I." They sat there for a while longer, no words needed, just the soft creak of the porch swing and the whisper of leaves above them. The storm had shaken everything, but in its wake, it left behind something rare, something meant to be. One quiet evening, as rain tapped gently against the window panes, Nathan reached into his wallet and pulled out a worn photograph. He held it for a moment, his eyes soft with memory, then passed it to Rachel. "This was Lisa," he said quietly. "She's been with me every day, even after she was gone." Rachel looked at the photo, a woman with kind eyes and a radiant smile. There was so much love captured in that single image, it brought a lump to her throat. "She was beautiful," she whispered. Nathan nodded, a bittersweet smile tugging at his lips. "She was, and for a long time I thought letting her go meant forgetting her. But now I realize it means making space, honoring what was, and allowing something new to grow." Rachel gently placed her hand over his. "I'm not here to replace her, but I do want to walk beside you, wherever this leads." He looked at her then, not just with gratitude, but with something deeper. Peace. A few weeks later, nestled in a cozy mountain cabin surrounded by pines and starlit skies, that something new took shape. They'd spent the weekend hiking sunlit trails and sharing laughter by the fire, wrapped in quilts and quiet moments. On their final night, with flames crackling beside them, Nathan took Rachel's hand and turned toward her. "These past few months," he began, voice thick with emotion, "have changed me in ways I never thought possible. I never expected to feel this way again. but I do. Because of you." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. Rachel's breath caught. "Rachel," he said, opening it to reveal a delicate ring that sparkled like the stars above them, "will you marry me?" Tears welled in her eyes as joy rushed through her. "Yes, Nathan. Yes." As he slipped the ring onto her finger and gathered her into his arms, the storm that once brought them together now felt like a distant echo. Because this moment, this love, was everything. The ceremony was simple, intimate, just as they had wanted. Beneath the canopy of soft lights strung across Rachel's backyard, surrounded by a handful of friends, neighbors, and family, Rachel and Nathan stood hand in hand, hearts wide open. There were no elaborate decorations, no grand gestures, only sincerity, laughter, tears, and two people who had weathered storms, both literal and emotional, to find their way to this very moment. As Rachel looked into Nathan's eyes, her voice steady and full, she spoke vows born not from fairy tales, but from truth, from quiet nights and shared vulnerability, from the healing power of connection. And when Nathan promised to cherish her, not just in joy, but in uncertainty, not just in calm, but in every storm to come, Rachel knew with absolute certainty this was home. Later that evening, as twilight softened the world around them and the stars blinked into the darkening sky, Nathan took her hand and smiled. "Ready for whatever comes next, Mrs. Anderson?" Rachel squeezed his hand, her heart full. "As long as we're facing it together, Nathan, I'm ready for everything." The night settled gently around them, but inside something powerful pulsed. Hope, rebirth, the quiet triumph of two souls choosing love again. Looking back, Rachel couldn't help but marvel at how one stormy night changed everything. What began with a knock on the door had become something profound, an awakening of the heart, a rediscovery of connection, and the courage to embrace the unknown. Together, they stepped into the future. Not perfectly, not without scars, but with open hearts and unwavering trust. Because sometimes the most extraordinary love stories don't begin in sunshine. They begin in the storm. In the weeks that followed, life felt lighter, brighter, like something long asleep had finally awakened. Rachel and Nathan continued building a life rooted in trust, laughter, and quiet, everyday magic. Their love wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It lived in shared glances, early morning coffee, and the way their hands always seemed to find each other. Sometimes Rachel would catch herself smiling for no reason at all, just remembering how it all began. A storm, a knock, a moment that could have been missed, but wasn't. And yet, even as their story settled into something beautiful and steady, one question lingered. Subtle, thrilling, full of possibility. What if the storm was only the beginning? Because life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. And for Rachel and Nathan, the greatest chapters may still be waiting, just beyond the next wind, the next quiet night, the next door left slightly ajar.